Goals are important because they give you a sense of direction. They tell you where you want to go, what you want to achieve, and why you're working hard in the first place. But here's the truth most people miss. Goals alone won't get you there. You can write down your goals, repeat them every morning, put them on the wall, and still never move an inch if you don't have a system that supports your progress. It's the system, not the goal, that drives your daily action. And daily action is where the results live. Think of goals as the destination on a map. They tell you the city you're trying to reach. But a map without a vehicle, without roads or a travel plan, isn't going to get you anywhere. That's what a system is. It's the vehicle that moves you from where you are to where you want to be. A well-built system breaks your big far-off dream into something practical and doable right now, today. Let's say your goal is to get in shape. That's a worthy goal, but vague. What does in shape even mean? Lose weight? Gain muscle? Run a mile without collapsing? Most people set the goal, then hope motivation will carry them through. But motivation is short-lived. It fades in the face of stress, laziness, and comfort. That's why systems matter. Instead of focusing on the end result, you create a system. Exercise at 7 a.m. every day. Follow a meal plan. Track your sleep. Keep a journal. That system brings your focus to the present and gives you something you can control every day. Whether you feel like it or not, the system tells you what to do. And over time, those actions stack up and build real results. Now imagine a business owner who says, my goal is to make $1 million. That sounds exciting. But without a system to serve customers, improve the product, manage the team, and market consistently, that goal is just wishful thinking. The daily disciplines of running a business, the system, are what actually produce the income. The goal may inspire you, but the system is what moves the needle. You don't make $1 million because you wrote it on a vision board. You earn it because your system delivers consistent value to the marketplace. Systems also have the power to shift your identity. When you commit to a system, say, writing 500 words every morning, you don't just move toward the goal of writing a book, you start to become a writer. When you follow a system of saving and investing a portion of your income, you don't just get closer to financial freedom, you begin to think and behave like someone who is financially responsible. That shift in identity is incredibly powerful, and it doesn't come from the goal, it comes from living the system. And here's something else to consider. Systems are flexible. If a goal becomes irrelevant or circumstances change, your system can adapt. You don't have to throw everything out and start from scratch. You tweak the system, not your entire life. That gives you resilience and the ability to keep moving forward no matter what life throws at you. Ultimately, goals are great for giving you vision, but they're poor at creating momentum. Momentum comes from the actions you take every day, and those actions live inside your systems. A strong system creates consistency, and consistency over time outperforms intensity every time. So instead of fixating on the finish line, build the routine, the structure, the habits, the system that carries you toward it. Let the system do the heavy lifting, one action at a time. One of the biggest problems with traditional goal setting is that goals exist in the future. They're always out there someday, some year, some moment down the road. And the danger with that kind of thinking is that it keeps you chasing something you haven't earned yet, often ignoring the power of what you could be doing today. It creates a constant gap between where you are and where you want to be, and for many people that gap becomes discouraging. It leads to frustration, impatience, and sometimes even paralysis. That's why systems are so valuable, because they shift your focus from the future into the present, from where you're going to what you're doing. Think about it. If you only fixate on the outcome, you're always waiting for some result to validate your effort. You might say, I'll be happy when I reach my goal weight, or I'll feel successful once I make 6 figures. But what about now? What about today? Systems answer that question. A system gives you something to engage with today. A goal might say, lose 20 pounds, but a system says, go for a 30-minute walk this morning. That's something you can do now. That's where change happens. There's something powerful that happens when you start living in the present. You stop living in wishful thinking and start living in purposeful action. You begin to realize that every day holds an opportunity to practice discipline, to get just a little bit better, to move an inch forward. And if you move an inch every day, it doesn't take long before you've gone a mile. But if your mind is always set on the mile, you may never take that first step. When you live in a system, you're no longer waiting for success to arrive. You're participating in it, moment by moment. You're building momentum, creating habits, shaping behavior, and most importantly, gaining confidence through repeated action. Systems give you a sense of control over your growth because they don't require giant leaps. They just ask for consistency. Let's say your goal is to read 24 books this year. That sounds inspiring, but it lives 12 months into the future. A system, on the other hand, says read 10 pages a day. That's practical. That's actionable. And if you stick to the system, you'll exceed the goal without even worrying about it. You don't need to pressure yourself with the final count. You just need to keep showing up to the process. The system handles the math. And what about those times when motivation runs dry? What happens when you're tired or discouraged or tempted to quit? If your mind is stuck in the future, looking at how far you still have to go, those are the moments when you'll give in. But if your system is rooted in the present, all you have to do is complete today's task. One page, one workout, one act of courage. That's manageable. That's doable. Systems remove the emotional weight of the big goal by narrowing your focus to what matters right now. Systems also help you stay consistent because they make your actions part of your routine. The more you act today, the less resistance you'll feel tomorrow. And once your system becomes habit, it starts to carry you automatically. You don't have to think so hard about every step. You just follow the plan. That kind of rhythm creates freedom. You're no longer trapped in cycles of guilt and disappointment. You're living with purpose. In the end, goals may set the direction, but systems are what make progress possible. They're grounded in action, anchored in the present. And that's where transformation begins. Not someday, but today. Every day you wake up, your system is waiting. It doesn't ask if you're in the mood. It just says, let's get to work. And over time, the work you do daily becomes the life you've been dreaming about. Motivation is a wonderful spark. It can ignite action, get you excited, get you moving. But like a match, it burns out quickly. You can't rely on motivation to show up every day. It's too unpredictable. One day you feel on fire, ready to conquer the world. And the next day you don't even want to get out of bed. That's why depending on motivation is risky business. If your success is built on waiting for that perfect mood, you'll never be consistent, and you'll be productive only when you feel like it. And let's be honest, that's not very often. What works instead is building a system. Systems don't ask how you feel. They don't care whether you're inspired. Systems are consistent because they're built into your routine. They remove the decision-making process. You don't have to wonder what to do. You already know because it's in the plan. And when you show up consistently, day in and day out, something powerful happens. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. Let's say you want to start working out. On the days you're motivated, it feels great. You get dressed, go to the gym, maybe even push a little harder. But what about the days you don't feel like going? What about when it's cold outside, or you're tired, or you had a long day at work? That's where most people quit. But if you have a system, I go to the gym at 6:30 every morning, no matter what, you eliminate the internal debate. It becomes part of your identity. You're not someone who works out when it's convenient. You're someone who trains, period. This shift from motivation to system is where the real transformation begins, because motivation is emotional and systems are structural. Motivation is fragile. Systems are durable. They're built to withstand the highs and lows of life. Systems create discipline, and discipline sustains your progress when motivation fails. If you only work when you're inspired, your progress will be inconsistent at best. But when you work the system works for you. Another advantage of systems over motivation is that systems create patterns. And once a pattern is established, it becomes easier and easier to follow. You've probably experienced this yourself. When you start doing something every day, whether it's writing, walking, meditating, or making sales calls, it begins to feel normal. It becomes automatic. That's the power of consistency. And consistency leads to results. It's not what you do once that changes your life. It's what you do every day. Now you might be thinking, but what if I fall off track? That's the beauty of a system. It makes it easier to restart. Because you're not relying on a feeling, you're relying on a framework. If you miss a day, you don't fall apart. You simply return to the system. You don't have to drum up a new burst of motivation. You just get back into the routine. Systems offer stability. They take the emotion out of it. And here's something else. When you follow a system, motivation often follows. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates results. And results create motivation. That's the real formula. Don't wait for motivation. Create it by showing up. Use your system to build momentum, and soon you'll find your energy rising naturally because now you see progress. You feel capable. You see the change. It's no longer about hype, it's about habit. Success doesn't come to the most excited, it comes to the most consistent. And consistency is not built on feelings, it's built on systems. A good system turns the extraordinary into something ordinary. You don't have to do something massive, you just have to do something daily. And when you replace motivation with a solid system, you don't need to get ready, you stay ready. Discipline is often misunderstood. People think it's about forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do over and over through sheer willpower. But real discipline, the kind that lasts, doesn't feel like a battle every day. That kind of discipline comes from building systems that work with your life, not against it. When you put systems in place, you don't have to keep making the same decisions or negotiating with yourself. The decision is already made, the path is already laid out. The system becomes the structure that carries your discipline forward automatically. Let's take a simple example. Brushing your teeth. You don't need motivation to brush your teeth. You don't have to talk yourself into it each morning. It's just something you do. Why? Because it's part of your system. It's ingrained. Now imagine if you could build your work habits, your health habits, your learning habits in the same way. Imagine if discipline wasn't something you needed to conjure up every time, but instead something built into your day like brushing your teeth. That's what systems do. They turn discipline into routine. A well-designed system removes decision fatigue. That's one of the biggest reasons people fail to stay disciplined. They burn out from having to decide every single day, should I work out? Should I make that sales call? Should I read or just relax? Every one of those little choices drains mental energy. But when you have a system, the question is no longer should I? It becomes what time or what's next. Discipline becomes less about inner strength and more about outer structure. You're not struggling, you're executing. Think about a professional athlete. They don't rely on daily motivation to train. They have a system. They wake up, they stretch, they eat, they train, they recover. It's a repeatable pattern. That pattern produces results. Discipline, in this case, isn't heroic, it's consistent. That's the lesson. You don't need to be extraordinary to be disciplined. You just need a system that keeps you steady. Another thing systems do is make success sustainable. A burst of motivation might help you eat healthy for 3 days, but a meal prep system helps you do it for 3 years. A big goal might get you to write 1 chapter, but a daily writing system helps you finish the book. Systems aren't about intensity, they're about reliability. And discipline that relies on systems is built to last. It's not based on mood swings or adrenaline. It's based on habits, environment, and rhythm. What's more, systems simplify your focus. In a world full of distractions, trying to be disciplined without a system is like trying to navigate a storm without a compass. Systems give you direction and eliminate distractions before they become temptations. If your system is to write for 1 hour each morning before checking email, then you don't have to argue with yourself about when to write or whether you have time. You just follow the plan. The structure frees your mind to focus, and focus strengthens discipline. Systems also help you measure and adjust. When you rely only on discipline without a framework, It's hard to know what's working and what's not, but systems are trackable. You can see where the routine breaks down, you can fix it, you can refine it. That constant feedback makes your discipline smarter, sharper, and more effective over time. In the end, discipline doesn't have to be a daily struggle. It doesn't have to be about grit and grind all the time. With the right systems in place, discipline becomes second nature. It becomes part of who you are. And the more you trust your systems, the more freedom you'll feel. Because you won't be fighting to stay on track, you'll already be there. Success isn't just about hitting a goal. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally reaches those goals through consistent behavior and habits. That's why systems are so powerful. They're not just about what you do, they're about who you're becoming. When you follow a system every day, over time it begins to reshape your identity. You don't just act differently, you start to see yourself differently. And once your identity aligns with the actions you're taking, success becomes not just possible, but predictable. Let's say your goal is to become financially free. That's a big idea, a noble pursuit. But unless your actions reflect that identity, the goal stays a fantasy. Now imagine instead that you build a system. You budget every week, track your expenses, invest consistently, and live below your means. Those aren't just tasks, they are behaviors tied to a new identity. Someone who is responsible, intentional, and future-focused. Eventually, you stop just trying to save money. You become a person who manages money well. And that change in identity drives your behavior even when the excitement of the goal wears off. This is a principle that works across every area of life. A person who wants to write a book but doesn't write daily is hoping for a result they haven't built the identity for. But the person who writes 500 words every morning doesn't just get closer to finishing a book, they become a writer. The shift is subtle, but it's critical. Actions driven by identity are much more sustainable than actions driven by fleeting emotion. When you act in alignment with who you believe you are, discipline becomes natural. You're not forcing it, you're fulfilling it. Systems give you this power because they're repeatable. They give you a way to reinforce identity day after day. The more you follow the system, the more evidence you gather that you are in fact the kind of person who does this. And that evidence compounds. With every repeated action, your belief in yourself grows. You start to expect more from yourself, not out of pressure, but out of alignment. You're simply acting in harmony with the version of you that's emerging through daily effort. Now, most people set a goal, try to grind it out for a few weeks and then quit when the result doesn't come fast enough. They think they failed, but really, they didn't give the system enough time to do its work. Transformation doesn't happen in a burst. It happens through repetition, through living the process, through being the kind of person who shows up, even when the payoff is still far down the road. It's not glamorous, but it's effective. This is where patience and trust in the system are essential. You have to give it time. Systems don't just produce outcomes, they mold character. They test your willingness to stay the course. And as you stay consistent, the external results begin to appear, but more importantly, your internal growth becomes undeniable. You don't just lose weight, you become healthy. You don't just make sales, you become a professional. You don't just manage time, you become productive. Systems build identity through action. Eventually, you stop needing to remind yourself to follow the system. It becomes part of who you are. That's the beauty of systems. They start as external structures and evolve into internal standards. You rise to meet them, not because you have to, but because it's who you are now. That's when the process becomes automatic. You're no longer trying to change, you've already changed. The system did its job, one day at a time. The idea that small, well-designed systems can lead to massive transformation is one of the most underestimated truths in personal development. Most people look for big changes, dramatic moments, or life-altering events to trigger a new chapter. But real change doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, quietly, through the power of tiny, consistent actions. When those actions are repeated inside a strong system, the compound effect takes over. And over time, that steady effort adds up to something extraordinary. You don't have to overhaul your entire life to make progress. In fact, trying to do too much too fast often backfires. You burn out, lose focus, or get discouraged when results don't appear overnight. But when you commit to something small and sustainable, something you can repeat daily, you build momentum without overwhelming yourself. That's the secret of small systems. They're not intimidating. They don't require a complete reinvention. They just ask you to show up again and again until the results start showing up too. Let's say you want to improve your health. You don't have to join an expensive gym, hire 5 coaches, and go on a radical diet tomorrow. That's a recipe for burnout. Instead, build a small system. Drink more water. Go for a walk every evening. Prep your meals once a week. These seem minor, but they are powerful because they're doable. They're the kind of habits you can sustain, and when you sustain something long enough, you start to see change, not just in your body, but in your discipline, your confidence, and your self-image. It's the same with business. Most entrepreneurs chase the next big idea, the explosive marketing campaign, the perfect pitch, but the business that wins long-term is the one with systems. A lead generation system, a follow-up system, a delivery system. These aren't glamorous, they're not flashy, but they work. Because while others are chasing chaos, the person with a system is building stability, and stability creates growth. Systems reduce the need for constant decision making. That's what makes them so powerful. When you design a system that works, it saves you energy, removes friction, and makes it easier to repeat success. Instead of thinking every day about what to do next, your system tells you. And the simpler the system, the easier it is to stick with. When you don't have to think about it, you're more likely to do it. Small systems also give you something even more valuable than results. They give you control. In a world full of noise and distraction, a system is like a quiet promise you make to yourself. It grounds you. It gives you a routine that you can depend on. And the more you trust that system, the more confident you become. You're not guessing your way forward. You're working your way forward. Eventually, those small actions start producing big wins. Not because you did something dramatic, but because you did something consistently. That's the compound effect. The page you write every morning becomes a finished book. The 5 calls you make each day become a successful business. The 5 minutes of reading each night becomes a deep well of knowledge. It all starts with a small system, repeated long enough to become unstoppable. Transformation isn't a matter of intensity, it's a matter of consistency. And consistency is easiest when the system is simple, smart, and sustainable. That's what gives you the edge. While others are waiting for the perfect time or the big breakthrough, you're already in motion. You've built something you can repeat. And what you can repeat, you can master. Small systems, when designed right, change everything. Not overnight, but for good. When you shift your focus from chasing goals to building systems, everything changes. You stop living in the future and start winning in the present. Success is no longer something you hope for. It becomes something you live by day after day. Systems create structure, discipline, and identity, and when those align, results become inevitable. It's not about doing something extraordinary once. It's about doing something purposeful consistently, because in the end, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the strength of your systems.